11 o'clock, let's go live.
And we will see quite a bit of a lag, so don't worry about that.
I'm going to go live anyways. Here we go.
It says we're now streaming live on Facebook, so we will definitely wait a minute or two for people to join us. It'll take them a minute to see it, and people might be logging on right now. So Heidi, what's it like in Oak Park today?
Well, while we are on this call, it may go from sunny and beautiful to storming. We're not sure, but it's currently great. Finally.
Oh wow! I hope it's not too bad for you. You'll have to pull the. Look at the curtains just flying in the wind. I love it.
Here. I'm not quite sure what to do about that. Yeah, no, it's beautiful out. It's been kind of really wet season and kind of dreary and cold. So we're looking for a good weekend, hopefully.
That would be lovely. Yeah. So Stan, is Southern California living up to its typical weather?
It sounds like it's going to this weekend. We're supposed to be hitting the 90s this weekend, which works out well. They just they more or less pressured Gavin Newsom into opening up the beaches for the folks. They haven't opened up the parking lots, which is going to make it kind of interesting because for the most part you can't get to a beach without a place to park your car. But I could tell just by the number of people we're seeing, even before they open the beaches legally, it will be a very busy day, Memorial Day weekend at our local beaches. But I'm sure everyone will be 6 feet apart.
I'm completely sure. So we are streaming live now on Facebook. If you're watching us, we're kind of getting started in this. I know Robin Richter's already said it's 90 there in Eustis, Florida, where she is, and Michael Pifer is watching us. So Michael, I'm going to be texting you something or sending you a message in just a moment. And actually, I'll do that in a moment so that Michael knows. We're going to wait a couple minutes or more, but Stan, why don't you tell us what is going on in your life that's not necessarily Frank Lloyd Wright related? Anything exciting that we would know about?
Well, I started out this pandemic as a single guy with a scruffy dog, and now I'm an engaged guy with a beautiful fiance, a cat, and a brand new Dachshund Puppy. So it's been an exciting. It's been an exciting few weeks here at Biblioteca Stanislao.
When is the big date?
Sometime after the pandemic ends. Haven't really worked that part of it out. I'm still getting used to the idea of being a fiance.
Well, enjoy that for a little while, right? You can kind of let that go a little while longer. Oh
yeah, well, and it's a phenomenal experience. I mean, we joke that everything that's happened in this relationship has been organic. Then the fates dropped a pandemic on our head, and we just roll right through it.
Now you have a Dachshund Puppy. Somebody asked me, is that a miniature Dachshund, a regular size Dachshund?
It is a miniature Dachshund, and I have it on pretty good authority. It's going to make a Zoom bomb sometime between now and, oh, look, wait, hold up. What would that be?
Look at Suzanne and the puppy. Hi, Suzanne. Hey. Yeah.
Sorry.
Suzanne would be the fiance.
Yes.
And Frida would be the puppy in question. And she's just a little bundle of joy.
The falling water.
Yes. That is so cute. Well, I think we've got quite a few people watching us now, so I am going to go ahead and I think we should probably get started. What do you think?
Let's do it.
You ready? Fantastic. Well, thank you for joining us on the first live stream I've done on the Right Attitude Facebook page. And I so very much appreciate Stan being a gracious host and letting us do it. My name is Tim. Yeah, I'm so glad. My name is Timothy Totten. I am the host of an upcoming podcast that launches in early July called the Not Too Serious Architecture Hour. And I've already been recording some episodes. So Stan knows what it's like to be in the hot seat for the Not Too Serious Architecture Hour podcast, as well as Kim Bixler, author of Growing Up in a Frank Lloyd Wright House. Yesterday I interviewed Linda Eels from the John Christian House, Samara, in West Lafayette, Indiana, and I have a bunch more planned. So we're going to bring you some awesome people for that. But today's a lovely live stream. I thought it'd be great to get on this Memorial Day weekend and bring together some people that would not, we don't get to be in the same room that often. So I'm in Florida, but I would not be able to do this event in Florida, even if we all could travel freely, because I have to bring these people, specifically Stan Eklund, admin of the Right Attitude, a docent at Hollyhock House. You're all the way on the other side of the country, right?
All the way over on the left coast.
And
Down to
luckily,
California.
meeting us right in the middle in the place probably if you and I were going to go hang out together might be Oak Park, and that's Heidi Ruehle from the Unity Temple Restoration Foundation. Thanks for joining us, Heidi.
Happy to be here.
So we may hear the sights and sounds of Oak Park during our talk. I know because you're right there by a lovely open window enjoying the breeze in Oak Park. So I'm a little jealous. I can't go walk down the street and find a bunch of really great architecture like you can. So a little jealous. And maybe I might just say, Heidi, I'm jealous of what's over your shoulder, but we'll talk about that in a minute. Because, yes, we're going to get into it. But we can't start unless we bring you into the Not Too Serious Architecture Hour with the Not Too Serious Architecture questions. Are you ready? They are 5 rather fast lightning round questions, and they are in no particular order. You ready?
Nervous. Go ahead.
Great. Question number 4. Who's your favorite architect?
Frank Lloyd Wright.
Okay, that's sort of a test to see if we have to kick you off the call or not. So that works out great. Question number 2. If you could forget any architectural period in history that you just would never have to hear or see again, which one would it be?
When Mike Brady was designing ranch houses or tri-levels.
Okay. Got it. Okay, that's good. This is question number 5, I guess. I don't remember the numbers because they're all made up anyway. Question number 5. This one's a little controversial, and this one has split up relationships. Squeeze from the bottom of the tube or the middle of the tube, Heidi?
Bottom, for sure.
You strike me as the kind of person who likes to be organized, right? Yes. Okay, I just squeeze it wherever. So that's how that goes. Question number 2.
Out of context.
If we were to name, if you could name us, other than the Frank Lloyd Wright buildings in the area and obviously where you work, can you name us another interesting architectural highlight of Oak Park that we should all be paying attention to?
Absolutely. Where I used to work, Pleasant Home, it's a George Mayer house right in the middle of Oak Park.
Yeah, and I think Stan and I have had the opportunity to see that, right? We did, luckily, because I knew the answer you'd give, Heidi, because you're the one who could let us see it. So it's so lovely. And finally, if you could live in or work in any building, and I'm going to suggest a Frank Lloyd Wright building because you named him as your favorite architect, other than the one you already work in, it's got to be a different one. Which one would it be? You could live in it or work in it, either one. So it could be public building or a house.
I think I will say the other National Historic Landmark, there's 4 of them in Oak Park, by the way, the Ruehle House.
Oh, that's a really good choice.
Right?
Absolutely.
Work or live?
Oh.
These days it's both, but I think live.
That's really fantastic. Yeah, I think that's actually my mother's favorite. And she's on watching the call now, Robin Richter. So she's in love with that. Let's see. We have some great people on the chat with us. I'm just going to mention so far that Michael Pifer's watching, Fred Unwin. We have Cecil Fields, a docent at Westcott House. So Cecil, welcome. Robin Jolly Richter, obviously. Razine Khan is watching us, and Andrew Marshall. So, hey, thanks so much for being with us. And we're going to keep going now with our talk. We really want to focus today on restoration efforts. And I love the fact that I have 2 people with me who are closely connected with UNESCO World Heritage sites. That's pretty impressive to have you in the room. I'm not sure I would have gotten you when there wasn't a pandemic forcing you to stay inside your house. So now that I have you, I thought we would talk a little bit about restoration efforts. And you both are a bit unique because I think you both sort of come into your positions after the restorations were mostly completed. Stan, I don't want to go too far into it because people can hear more about it in your particular episode of the podcast, but you kind of came to Hollyhock House after a huge restoration. So tell me, can you give us the 1 or 2 minute really fast version of how many restorations Hollyhock has had and how extensive this last one was?
Yeah, it's gone through a handful. The first thing that it's not technically a restoration, it was a renovation, was back in 1946 when the Olive Hill Foundation took over a 10-year lease on the house. And that's important only because at that point in time, in 1942, the house had been condemned. And so the fact that anybody was doing anything to the house was considered positive. Unfortunately, most of the things they did were not taking it back to where it needed to be. We had a major renovation in the mid-1970s when the house was once again in poor shape, but this was actually the first true restoration. Mayor Bradley decided that he didn't want to be known as the guy who tore down a Frank Lloyd Wright house, and so he found money and Lloyd Wright to come back and do the first genuine restoration. We had another restoration effort after the 1994 Northridge earthquake, which took care of a lot of the earthquake damage. We didn't have a lot of damage at the house, but the damage that was done for the most part was repaired. There was another one in the right around 2000 to do earthquake remediation, adding a lot of structural steel. Most of the concrete pillars now have a steel core, and there's a number of steel box beams running around the soffits of the house, making it a much stronger structure. The most recent restoration, the one that you were talking to when we started, was from 2010 to 2015, and that was really a look and feel restoration, bringing the house back to what it was. A lot of the interpretations that had been made from some questionable sources, and so the decision was made to really do the deep dive. So a year was spent doing nothing but picking and peeling and poking and core sampling and figuring out what the true colors were, and then using the recipes that Wright had documented, your classic old world European with a little Wrightian twist every once in a while. That allowed us to go back and actually restore all of the surfaces inside and out to the original colors using the original methods. So we think the house is about as close to, certainly the public spaces of the house are as close to what they were in 1922 as they've been since 1922. The rest of the house, the non-public spaces, have not been renovated to the same level. Of course, they're also not as spectacular being non-public spaces, but they will be going on display soon, so people will have the opportunity to see some of the decisions that were made by earlier iterations of restoration efforts.
So we're talking about Hollyhock House in, is that technically Hollywood or California? What do they call it?
It's Los Angeles, but it's East Hollywood.
Got it. East Hollywood, Los Angeles, and California. And obviously, Stan, I'm just updating those who have joined us since we started. Stan Eklund is a docent at Hollyhock House. He does train docents there as well. And also is the moderator / administrator / founder, the benevolent dictator of the Right Attitude Facebook group. I love that. Now, before we get to Heidi, because she's had a more recent restoration, doesn't Hollyhock do sort of take some time off every year and do other projects, Stan?
That's been the plan. Normally we take the month of October off to do a major project that you can't do while you've got active touring and so forth. So for example, I think 3 years ago, we rebuilt the ley light above the fireplace, taking out some non-authentic elements and reinstalling some recreated art glass. We do have a couple of projects on the docket, most notably the ceiling in the living room, which is still, don't tell anybody, but it's faux finished. But unfortunately, it's such a lengthy project that 3 years ago they tried to do it, or 2 years ago they tried to do it, and a contractor needed an extra day and we didn't have an extra day. And then last year, they simply couldn't find anybody who could knock it out in that month-long period. So that will have to be done at some point. And there's a half a dozen projects in the queue at any given time. As Heidi may not know now, but we'll certainly learn before too long, restoration is an ongoing project. Even when you think you're done, there's something that needs to be done still.
I find it interesting that all of the research required, Stan, to do a restoration, and then you still find out that things maybe need to be further restored.
Oh, absolutely.
How do they figure out what the ley light should look like, especially when we think about Hollyhock House? Because Hollyhock House was, correct me if I'm wrong, never really occupied as a house, and quite a few of the details I think were sort of in transition between Frank Lloyd Wright and those who kind of came after to finish the project. So how do they make the determination where they're going to return it to, where they're going to get the details from? How's that happen?
Well, it's true that the house was never occupied as a house. when in 1921, Aline Barnsdall canceled the overall Olive Hill project, which meant stopping work on Hollyhock House when it was about 3/4 done. Fortunately, the public spaces where that ley light occurs, those are the parts of the house that Wright got a chance to finish before the project was terminated. It was mostly the back of the house, the second floor owner's suite that was primarily the part that was left undone. We're also very fortunate that there were pictures taken of the house, professional pictures taken. We still don't understand why, because by the time the pictures were taken, she really already made the decision to give it up. So we don't know the reason behind it, but we have really good pictures of the public spaces. And so the ley light is one thing we do know very clearly what it looked like. And then we also know the changes that Lloyd Wright made to it during that 1946 renovation effort. We were able to, for example, he had taken 4 of the 9 pieces of art glass that were in it, pulled them out and replaced them basically with milk glass. We were able to, several years ago, reproduce those pieces of glass and put it in, so you have a full 9-piece set. And then now, just recently, the owner of the museum, I'm trying to remember who it was who had them, someplace back east, had the 4 pieces and traded them straight across for the 4 reproductions. So we actually have the 9 original, the 9 original pieces back in there. We have some more changes that we need to make, mostly finishing the shaft that is behind the ley light, because once the pieces are taken out so that the ley light, the art glass hangs in space the way it is supposed to, you can see beyond it. And right now, beyond it is just bare plaster and white paint. And we need to finish that. It's another one of those ongoing projects we've got.
You know, you're speaking of ley light. I'm reminded, I just noticed that Norm Strasma from the Bradley House in Kankakee, Illinois is on with us watching on Facebook. And, you know, just within the last few years, they replaced all of that art glass that had gotten lost from the dining room. And they know what that's like. I would love to, one day, hopefully we'll do a live stream with them as well and share the things that they've been able to accomplish. There's a lot of that restoration going on in the Wright world. Razine is asking, I think it's Razine, isn't it? Am I saying his name right? I hope I am. Mr. Khan is asking about specifically a little more about the complex. And I know there's another restoration project happening right now, but I can't remember if it's residence A, B, C, D, E, F, G, yes. H, or tell us what else is going on the complex.
Well, so, you know, when the project was initially canceled, there were 2 other houses on Olive Hill beyond Hollyhock House, residences A and B. The intention is that they would have been for high-ranking members of the theater group that was in residence at the time. Residence B, which was on the western face of the hill, was lost in 1954, was demolished. It had gone into disrepair for a number of years. But Residence A is still there and has served a long life as the art center and the junior art center for the city of Los Angeles. And about 3 years ago now, we started looking for and received a number of grants to go back and start the restoration process on that. So they spent about a year doing remediation. There was a lot of asbestos and a lot of lead paint and all those things that you would expect to have in a house of that age. There was also a lot of work that had been done to the house incorrectly over time, trying to resolve leaking problems, which has been an issue for us, and just changes to accommodate the fact that it was a public building for the city. They added bathrooms downstairs and did all sorts of things, public bathrooms downstairs. So we're about 3 years into the project now. It's phenomenal to see the changes, even without, we haven't really started the putting it back together part, but just taking out the portions that shouldn't be there and the opening up of windows and openings that had been covered over time. The light in there is just phenomenal. Anybody who was in Los Angeles for the Conservancy's annual conference last year got the opportunity to tour the house in its partly restored condition, and already you can see what a spectacular space that's going to be. It's a wonderful combination of Wright's genius and original styling with Rudolf Schindler basically coming in to do a lot of the finish work and the finished drawings for it. So it's this wonderful synergy between the two that we're very excited to have complete. And the plan is once it's done, it'll be on public tour along with the Hollyhock House.
So that's Residence A, right? That's
Residence A. Sometimes sometimes you'll hear it referred to as the director's house. That was one of the terms that was used for it early on.
So is there a target date for when that would be finished and available to be seen?
Yeah. I've yet to see a specific date. I mean, it was always said that it was a 5-year plan, and we're about 3+ years into that 5-year plan. We are in the put it back together phase. I mean, they've rebuilt the bump out that's on the western side of the house. They're in the process of rebuilding the balcony that's on the north side. Those are two major projects that need to be accomplished. I mean, they still have a lot of work ahead of them, so I'm going to stick with that 5-year plan. So I would say probably under 8 months, 2 years.
That's great. So Heidi, I don't know if you've ever had the opportunity to go to Hollyhock yet. Have you had that chance yet?
Conservancy conference.
Great, absolutely. Well, it's interesting. You can see some of the, I think, at least in my mind, because Hollyhock is a transitional time frame for Wright, there are still some of those similar practices that he was doing in his prairie style years that do fit into the work. So maybe some of the wall finishes are a little bit similar, some of those uses. Heidi, Unity Temple has just completed, I say just because it's very fresh in my mind, a rather long restoration. How long was the well, before we get to that point, Heidi, tell us what your role is at Unity Temple, because I know it's a little different than some places. A person might be in charge of tourism. I know that's not your area of expertise, so we're really not even going to talk about the tourism part. What is your role at the Unity Temple Restoration Foundation, and then we'll go into what the restoration actually looked like.
Sure. Well, I'm the executive director of the organization, and right now we're a one-woman show, so pretty much anything that happens, it's me. But the mission of the organization is to restore Unity Temple. That's the way it's been since 1973. In it, over the years, the organization has been responsible for tours, and then currently, and we've been building over many years, artistic and cultural and educational programming. So overseeing all of that, and I know the restoration was completed, but currently we're now long-term preservation mode, constantly funds to keep in the great condition that it's in.
So when did the most recent restoration begin? Did we lose Heidi?
Yeah.
No, you're still there. I'm trying to figure out oh, there we go. Okay. My stuff, I think it's the cat messing with stuff. When did the most recent restoration begin, and how long was that process?
It was about 2.5 years. It started in 2015, the actual work and closing down of the building, and ended about mid-2017. So it reopened back to the public, I think it was July of 2017.
It's hard to believe it's been that long, but you know, I think I went to Chicago a couple of times during that, and, you know, had to look at the scaffolding and go, okay, one day soon. And I got to go into the building not long after, and it really was a spectacular change, because you realize that it's been a working building for all of these years. So what was the purpose of the restoration? It was a pretty heavy involved restoration, right?
It was really comprehensive. It was ended up being about $25 million. And it was interesting. So living and working in this area, I was very familiar with that building. And it's unlike a lot of homes where walls are torn down or things are really changed. For the most part, the bones of the building were the same. So you kind of looked around and thought, well, other than some leaking, you know, roofs and things like that, what could they change? And it was phenomenal to see what A, needed to be done, and B, the results. A lot of the concrete was a huge part of the restoration on the exterior. The interior had suffered a lot of leaking, so a lot of repairs on the roof, and then repairs to the interior finishes. Every single inch of wood trim was removed and restored. All of the stained glass windows and light fixtures were removed and restored. And then the finishes on the wall, if you were to listen to Gunny Harbo, the restoration architect, talk about it, it's like a kid in a candy shop. It gets very excited to talk about the process because it was really involved, and then really exciting to see how they came up with the finished product. So if you look at the before and afters, you go, oh, okay, now I see why, it was so needed.
So I have some photos that you gave me, and I'd love to share them. Which one do you want me to start with first? What do you want to show?
Showing the concrete, the exterior. Actually, no, the exterior wrapping of the building.
There's a geothermal picture of the outside, or do you want the Shot Creek photo?
Now let's go geothermal, because I wanted to mention that as well.
Yeah. Let me, my computer is going as fast as you might imagine when you want it to go fast. You know how that is. So I will have it. Oh, you know what? I have to become a host again to do that.
Oh.
Stan, is it possible for you to make me the host again? You click the little buttons on the top of right of my screen. It should say three little blue in a blue square. Like above my head, it should say, you should be able to put your mouse on.
I got it. Ooh, there's a mute for you though.
Yeah, well, I know you probably want to do that.
So if I make you host, I wonder what that's going to do. Well, let's find out.
But it does it the live stream?
Yeah.
We'll find out.
We'll find out in 3, 2, 1.
Okay, it still says we're live on Facebook, so.
And you are the host.
I can do it. That's great. Okay, so I'm going to share the screen. Y'all tell me when you see it, and go ahead and talk, Heidi, when you see the picture.
I see it.
You see it?
Yeah, so that's the exterior view of the north facade of Unity Temple right along Lake Street, which is the main street through town. And you can see how the entire building is completely encased except for those columns there. That's how it was through the bulk of the restoration. And they were doing work on the exterior within that casement. And what we're seeing here is when they were driving the holes, I forgot the proper term, for the geothermal. There are 9 wells there in the lawn. It's a very small lawn in front of the building. So there are 9 wells with the geothermal system. And throughout the whole entire building, the mechanical engineer, Mark Nussbaum, did an incredible job of hiding miles worth of pipes and equipment, either in the basement or in, structural hollow columns. So it was a really intense project, but it was fantastic because the building has never been air conditioned, and the congregation, in fact, couldn't even worship there in the summers when it would get really hot. So it was a great addition.
I think one of the interesting parts you mentioned was specifically about the kind of work they had to do on the outside of the building. I think that's part that I find interesting is the construction that Wright specified in 1905, I think it is. This building is 1904, 1905?
06 when it started, yeah.
Oh, 06, sorry. So I think, like, if we look at this, the way they were needing to restore the concrete work on the outside, I mean, very unusual for 1906 to have a concrete building, let alone a concrete church.
Yeah, absolutely. It was one of the first public buildings to use concrete in this way as, basically the entire structure of the building. So what you're seeing here, though, is more of a modern technique, which I'll get back to in a minute, but that building was originally made out of poured concrete. So, layer by layer, they'd pour the concrete in to build up those walls. And then in the 1970s, there's a lot of damage was done to the building, as you can imagine, with water and freezing and things like that, and the elements. So a new technology came about called a shotcrete, which is basically what you're seeing here, spraying on of a concrete substance over the walls, which kind of creates a skin over the entire building. So that was done in the 1970s. And then during the restoration, we had to decide, do we go back to the poured concrete finish, or do we continue with this sprayed on finish? And they decided this was just the better technology and better material. So a lot of removal of concrete was done, addition of concrete, a lot of filling of cracks, and the team was amazing. They went and selected very specific rocks to make sure that the total aggregate matched the pieces around it. So it was quite a process.
For those of us who may have just joined us on Facebook, we are entertaining questions in the Facebook comments. So if you have any questions for Heidi about Unity Temple's restoration, about the work of the Restoration Foundation, or if you have any questions for Stan Eklund about restoration at Hollyhock or the ongoing efforts there, please make sure you ask them. You talked earlier, Heidi, about all of the wood trim removal, which is really important to do. for them. I remember how much they had to take off of. We were discussing it in another episode of the podcast with Kim Bixler about the Boynton house, which is a single, house, still 5,000 plus square feet. How much wood did you had to be taken off at Unity Temple, and what's that process look like?
Yeah, well, and now my mind just went blank as to how many miles it was. There's a statistic, and I'm sorry I forgot, but
it's like measured in miles, though.
To give an example of how much there was.
Yeah.
But what this photo is showing is not only was the trim removed, of course it had to be cataloged, and it was just, you see the blue painter's tape. You see, it sounds like such a complicated procedure to catalog wood trim, but it's pretty simple. But they had to track every single piece, what direction it went in, where the cuts lined up, and that was all refinished within the state of Illinois and then reinstalled. So I'm sorry, I don't remember the exact mileage of it, but tons and tons of wood trim throughout the entire building.
Well, it was clearly a lot because there's so much wood in that building, which is a major part of the design of Unity Temple. And for me, the peacefulness of the building is really built by all of the repetition of those forms and the geometry, for me. So Heidi, in a minute, I'm going to read off all the people that are watching us from all these different Wright sites, because I think you're going to be impressed. But tell me, because you get to work in Unity Temple normally, and you get to see it when there aren't all of us hanging out. What's your favorite place at Unity Temple?
So typically in the day-to-day, I'm stuck in my little windowless office in the basement of the building. So there have been days where I've walked straight through to my office, walked straight out, and didn't even look around. So my New Year's resolution for this year was every day I'm there, look around, and it's a good resolution. So there's so many neat parts to the building, and a lot of it the tourists either don't get to see or just don't pay so much attention to, like a lot of areas in Unity House. But of course, I think my favorite space is the sanctuary. And I like being on the top balcony because you're close to the windows. You can see directly out the clear story windows. You can look at the tops of the columns. And I've just laid down on pews up there before and took a break. And it's pretty phenomenal.
Stan, did you know you could lay on the pews? I thought, well, Stan, you normally lay on the floor to take pictures, so
yeah,
that probably makes.
I have not laid on the pews. I have crawled out on that projector that you have up there, but I've not laid on the floor. Not laid on any pews.
And maybe I wouldn't recommend everybody doing that, but it's the perk of the job.
Yeah, I think that's probably the right strategy. Somebody had to have laid on the ground to take this particular picture, Heidi, when she pops up on your screen. Tell us a little bit about what we're seeing here and what work had to be done in this space.
I think pretty much every professional or unprofessional photographer who's been able has laid down right there and taken that shot, as have I. This was right after the restoration. These photos were by Tom Rossiter, and this is showing the 25 skylights at the center of the sanctuary. And I love this photo because you see a lot of times the columns aren't included in the shots, and you can see how the 4 columns frame these skylights, and you're talking about the repetition of lines. It's all represented here. So all 25 of those skylights were removed and restored. And if you can kind of see in this photo too, correct me if I'm wrong, but the finish of the paint on the ceiling, do you see how it's kind of modeled and light and dark and a little different? That was had been painted over so many times, it was just a regular flat paint finish. And so they had to do a paint analysis, of course, and really determine how to apply the paint and the finish to give it that kind of suede look, which of course they accomplished, and it's beautiful.
And as a native Angelino, I feel obligated to point out that all that beautiful stained glass that you have there was rebuilt right here in Southern California at Judson Studio.
That is correct.
We were actually fortunate enough to be on a tour of Judson while the windows were there. And when you see them in place, they're spectacular. But until you see them all at one time, you don't realize how much glass there is. I mean, there was just cart after cart after cart. And they were so proud to be working on it, which is just, the fact that they're still there to do that stuff. They did all the glass at Hollyhock House, and so I'm really glad they got to do yours as well.
I'm envious you got to see it there. That's fantastic. Yeah, and the photo you're seeing now, the interior finish process, again, this is in Unity House, and you can see the yellow paint, and the brown paint around it's very flat because that's what we had at the beginning of the restoration. So they had to decide, do they sand off all the paint finishes? Do they just reapply it? So they ended up doing a partial removal of the paint and then reapplying and refinishing, so it would match as close to the original as possible. And there were some areas underneath wood trim and behind some radiators where the original paint was there, so they were able to use that as a clue as to how it should be done when it in its proper finish.
You know, I think what's really fun is that we've got a little less than 40 people watching us, but they are some good numbers of people that we all know and have met. Michael Pifer, the artist, is watching us. Cecil Fields, docent at Westcott House, I told you. Racine is watching us, a great, what's the right word? He's a modeler. Is that a 3D modeler of buildings? Does great, amazing work. I can't remember everyone who's on here. Beth Sycamore says greetings from Wisconsin. And Brian Hannon, you're here. Fred Unwin is from the Welsheimer Johnson house. We've had a great tour of there before. Norm Strasma, of course. Suzanne Stroman is watching probably from the other room, it seems, Stan. She must be out there on Facebook watching in the other room. Trouble. Eric Lundquist is in Michigan. I think at one point we had Stuart Graff is with us from the foundation, and from one of our favorite people, Stan. Not that any of those people have any less of our heart, but Clifton Bird Lewis Mashburn, who is Bird Lewis from Lewis Spring House in Tallahassee. We love her dearly. I'm going to get her on one of these calls soon. So we'll put her. I may have to go up there so I can actually show off the house too, because I haven't been there in a while. Stephen Freeman is with us from the Zimmerman and Khalil houses in Manchester, New Hampshire. So we're so glad that you're with us, joining us. Zachary Matthews, of course, Shenanigans Zachary, you know who you are.
Zach owes me an answer, by the way. If anybody was on the Walker House call yesterday, Chuck Anderson says that Zach owes him an inscription for the back of a little black and white photo, and I know Zach knows what I'm talking about, so I expect to hear from him to find out what exactly the story behind that is.
Well, Zach, I'm sorry for calling you out on the live stream so that Stan could get on to you. Brock Stafford is with us from Wisconsin and Taliesin Preservation, so thank you, Brock. I'm trying to think who else is in the... Preston Sutton wants to know, Heidi, if Unity Temple is used for religious services?
Yeah, so the original purpose of the church was for the Unitarian congregation that still exists there today. It's called the Unity Temple Unitarian Universalist Congregation. So that building is their home. And
a lot of U's there, Heidi. That's a whole lot of unity. That's a lot of U's. Go ahead. Sorry.
It took me a while to learn that one. That is their home, and so our purpose as the Restoration Foundation is really to kind of keep their home together and available to use. But it's really interesting that this entire time has been used by the same congregation. So they worship on Sundays and use the building here and there for some programming and classes and things like that.
I'm wondering if you can walk us through a couple of things that I see. We have some before and after pictures. So I'm going to share the before picture of Unity House. And for those who aren't familiar, Unity House is sort of almost a half of the building. It's for the Service of Man section. Am I right?
You got it.
Okay, so I'm going to share that to the screen now. And this is labeled as the before picture. Walk us through a little bit about what we're seeing and what we'll see different in the after photo.
So what you're seeing here is we're facing north, and if you go just beyond the lobby area there that you see where the sunlight's coming through, that would be the sanctuary. And I wish this showed the balconies on the right and left side of the photo, because those had been partitioned off in the 1960s to create closed room classrooms up there. The balconies were always meant to be a classroom, but of course it gets noisy. So during the restoration, we pulled out those partition walls and instead added a glass wall, so you could still have the privacy that they needed, but the light comes through, and it made a huge difference. I actually, sorry to interrupt you, but I felt that was very sympathetically done. What do you think, Stan, about the way that they put in classrooms without still allowing it to sort of fit Wright's maybe close to his original vision?
Well, I think as Heidi said, that was the intention. The classrooms are the vision. It's just that the reality sometimes overwhelms the vision. And so I understand why they did what they did when they did it, but by Gunny coming in and putting glass in there, you get the best of both worlds. You get the classrooms back, but you get the continuity that Mr. Wright intended in terms of the light and the visuals.
Sorry to interrupt you, Heidi. Yeah, keep going. Sorry about that.
Well, that was a great point. And as you know, I mean, a lot of times with restoration and preservation work, you have to be practical and you have to say, how is this space going to be used? So that was a great result. And if you see the row of stained glass windows at the top there, that is what used to be the minister's offices. It's only accessible from the sanctuary, and it's not part of a public tour. So it's a unique space. Now it's used more as a meeting room and as a second classroom. So this is where the congregation will gather after service, socialize, and if the building is rented, which it can be rented for social events, this is where, you know, the dinners would be, or the food and the gathering.
So this is the before picture, and I want to share the after picture because I think that'll be interesting to see what things changed. And I notice immediately when it finally pops up on your screen that the color is quite different and the finish almost feels like leather in here.
Isn't that phenomenal? And again, other than those partition walls, it's not as though the whole thing was changed, but just having the cleaned wood, and particularly in this space, the paint finish makes a huge difference. Not only in the coloration of it, but like you said, the finish, and you said leather, I say suede, same thing. It has this nice, soft, rich feel to it. And that was quite a process. We are currently having some people trained in this process. So when we have little repairs here and there, it's able to be done properly. Because you know how it goes, especially in a church over the years, you know, a very well-meaning congregant might come along and touch it up, but if it's not done correctly, it's going to start to look patchy. So that's the priority.
Was there any furniture that needed to be rebuilt or added, or maybe wood features that had to be corrected or replaced?
A bit in some of the light fixtures, but the chairs you see there, all the Wright design chairs are replicas of his actual designs. And there are a couple of tables in this space as well, but they're all usable because they are not the originals. So unfortunately, the furniture that Frank Lloyd Wright intended on building for Unity House never came to be. So it's a pretty wide open space.
I want to go over the sanctuary as well, since we were all here together and we can look at the sanctuary before. And this maybe has a little less difference unless you're looking at details. So I think we're now looking at the sanctuary before photo. And what were the, well, I don't know what you see now. Are you, okay. I have no idea what my computer's doing, so I hope yours is doing the right things.
Yours is right. Yeah, this is the before, and you know, it's hard to see here, but the above the altar, the ceiling space there, I don't remember the year, maybe 2012, the ceiling had caved in, and a lot of that material fell. Fortunately, the building was closed at the time, so no one got injured, but that had been, some plywood had been put up temporarily, so it was really unseemly. And then again, in this space, a lot of it is just the paint finish and the cleaning up and the refinishing of the wood.
So I think we do have an after picture. I wish it was faster that I could bounce between them. So I'm going to try to bounce between them easily. It'll take a second. So you'll see me in between. In the meantime, Marcus Bree has told us he is watching from Australia. So thank you, Marcus. That's really fantastic.
And Marcus has a fantastic wood model of Unity Temple that he's been.
Oh, is that Marcus?
Yeah.
Oh, so here's the difference between the two. I mean, the color, again, just the finishes are so obviously, bam, in your face, so much better right away.
Yep, absolutely. And then there's some little details that not everyone might notice at first. The flooring was redone. There were planters on the altar that were not originally there, so those were removed. And in some, I should have sent some to you, but I'm sure plenty of these people that are watching have seen it. In some of the original drawings, Frank Lloyd Wright had envisioned planters at the very top of the columns and elsewhere in the space that, again, those weren't realized. But so some little details were taken away that weren't meant to be there. But again, mostly it's the finishing that just, it's a wow factor.
Well, there's a warmth to it. I mean, even where a situation like this where the colors haven't changed that much, there's just a warmth to it now, but that wasn't there before, as if the life has been brought back into the space.
You know, I'm able to look at both pictures on my computer, and if I was better at this, I would be showing both of them to you at the same time. This photograph, the picture, the colors, it's not just a flat paint. You know, there is real texture, and so it feels somewhat alive. It doesn't feel like just a big blah wall space. And I think it's one of the problems that when you see a picture of Wright that hasn't been, of his buildings that haven't been taken sympathetically, or maybe it's my first book ever was a Vincent Scully Jr. book in black and white. So can you imagine seeing Frank Lloyd Wright in black and white? I mean, not the greatest. You need color, right? You need that. And here you get such a deep texture to these colors, and the wall finishes are clearly done by craftsmen. You know, it's just very warm. You understand why Wright likes these colors and why these colors work with that texture. I think that's just fantastic. I'm trying to look at what else we have. Go ahead. Sorry.
If you could go back to that or not, but his intention in the sanctuary was that no matter what was happening outside, as you know, in the Midwest, we're not always having sunny days, but that it would feel sunny inside. And in that photo, it was a good day. It was sunny, and you can see some of the reflections on the ceiling. But with the color and the way the clear story windows are positioned at the top, and the skylights, even on like a dark, dismal day, even if the lights are off, it still has a brightness and a warmth to it.
I can completely believe that. It's just, it works so well. I'm trying to think about, there's a great picture of the outside you sent me as well. And I think of when I think of Unity Temple, you know, there's two images in my mind. There's the great Marion Mahoney Griffin illustration, you know, that's so beautiful and makes it look like it glows so beautifully. And then I think of all those pictures from the 70s and 80s where all the old junky cars are parked outside and they're taken on like winter days or something. And the place is just kind of like this monolithic, but not in a pleasant way. And then you see shots like, I'm sorry?
It looks tired.
It does. And then and then you get, well, there's the right thing. And then you get shots like, you know, after the cleanup and the work done and the concrete is all fresh and bright and everything's, you know, the corners, no corners are sagging. And it really does. You see this balance of the building that he's working toward. I think that's really great.
And it doesn't hurt to have a beautiful blue sky, cloudy day like that too.
Well, I mean, yeah.
But you know what's interesting is right across, for those of you who've been there, right across the street, actually where this shot was taken, they were probably standing on the steps of the post office, which is right across the street. And that was done in the 20s. And it's got a similar color and feel to the structure from the outside. And I've been hearing rumors from a couple docents who've been here forever who said people would walk up and not know which building was Unity Temple, which was the post office. And nothing wrong with the post office, but it's obviously not the same. So I don't think people are making that or having that confusion anymore.
Well, no, thank goodness they're not. But I can, if I were driving down the street and I saw both of those buildings, because the post office it's obviously 1920s style. I don't know what you call that. Stan, what style is the post office in Oak Park?
Really deco.
20s Federalist.
Yeah, it's got a deco-ish side to it. And I mean, I would think that the Unity Temple is decades newer, just because the design is quite fresh, actually, for a building from 1906. Let's see, we have Brock Stafford asked a question. When were the letters outside Unity Temple replaced? He's alluding to possibly them being removed against their will at some point.
Yeah, they were stolen, if you can believe that, on both sides. And the funny thing is, if you look at this photo, you can see the letters had not been, I don't know if you can put your arrow around it, they had not been reinstalled quite yet. But they were stolen, and oh boy, I think it was 2014. I have to double check. Oh yeah, there you go. And they had made replicas of them, and then during the restoration, you know, they were not the same bronze lettering. So during the restoration, they had to decide, do we replace them with bronze and have them look shiny and new, or do we go ahead and patina them so they would be, look as they would at this age? And they decided to go with shiny and new, and they'll patina in time. But yeah, so they had 2 rounds of replacement, one right after they were stolen, and then one again during the restoration.
Wow. Maybe, Richard Katz doesn't live far from there. He's watching. Maybe he knows something. No, probably not, Richard. I'm just teasing, Richard. In fact, it might be a good time to mention that we've actually all been in the room together before. Didn't we have a really, I'm going to say this even though it was the dinner I threw, but we had a really great dinner in Oak Park, did we not?
At the Parker House. It was spectacular.
I don't know if you know this. Heidi, you will, because you live around the corner and you work there. But I was getting ready to bring another group back. So disclosure, I have a company called Architecture Travel Companion, and Robin Richter and I give tours for people to different Wright sites and elsewhere. And we were doing a very small group tour with a lot of, really involved, excited people about Wright, and Stan and Suzanne were guests with us. And we were staying at the Robert Parker House. So there was like 8 of us. And we got to, that's like 3 doors down from the home and studio. I mean, it's a perfect place to stay. And then Stan, would you not know it, 2 weeks later, the man closed on it and sold it to someone else. So we were the last people to get to stay in that house as a rental.
Yeah.
Which may explain why he wasn't so eager to fix the leak in the bathroom toilet. No, I shouldn't talk like that about anybody. But we had a really nice dinner with a couple of the people, with homeowners of the Winslow house as well. And, that's one of the valuable things that I find specifically about the Right Attitude, Stan, is that we get to meet other people that are as involved as we are, that I can be on a call with you, with Heidi. I can have conversations with homeowners, with people who grew up in these houses that are leading the cause today. And the Right Attitude is a great place for those people to all get together. If we look at it's almost a who's list of the people who are watching us right now and sharing this. They're not asking a lot of questions though. So,
well, we talked a bit about this on the podcast, but I am constantly amazed when I look at the people who are requesting access. As most of the folks in the group know, everyone who's a member of the group was hand selected. We have to accept your membership. And we ask questions of people, what's your association with the right world and so forth. And I'm constantly floored when I see some people who I recognize as homeowners or scholars or authors or, Stuart Graff, the president of the foundation. You see these and there's you get a little bit that little boy giddiness going. And then you realize that, well, that's part of what makes this group special, is that we do have a group of people who are very knowledgeable across the right spectrum. And so we can, yes, we spend a lot of time on frivolous things and the falling water cake and things like that, but we can also have some really serious discussions about the issues of the right world or about a particular house and take a deep dive into the architecture and the history. And to me, that's really what makes it worthwhile, and what makes me quite proud as the father of it all, to just be able to sit back some days and bask in the expertise and just absorb the knowledge that I get there.
And I have to say, as someone who, this of course is my job, I'm working for Frank Lloyd Wright's site. It's amazing how many people I've been connected to, not just socially, but professionally. I mean, you mentioned Marcus and Razine and Steve Freeman, and of course local people who I didn't know until I started working here, and it's all kind of coming through the Right Attitude. So it's been a pleasure being part of that.
One of the great things that we have by being connected to so many people is that we get to see what people are doing at other sites that are usually rather far flung. I can have a conversation with Fred at Welsheimer Johnson, and he doesn't always, that place is not open 24/7 or 7 days a week, or they don't have anywhere near the number of visitors that Falling Water does, because there are, buses rolling up constantly. But Fred lives and breathes Welsheimer Johnson just as much as anybody at Falling Water. Bird down in Florida is a one-woman band working hard for the Lewis Spring House. And if you haven't gotten there, you've got to get, because it's one of my very favorite Wright houses, and luckily it's only 3.5 hours away from me. And they really could use your love and your attention. But we've been really seeing the efforts of several artists. So Rosine, you talk about Marcus's work. I didn't know that was the gentleman's name, but I'm amazed by his models of Unity Temple. And so one of them is Michael Pifer, who I know is watching us and is a fantastic artist. He had, I think, Stan, wasn't a spread in the Foundations magazine?
Yes, in their issue about the World Heritage nomination, Michael was commissioned to produce the set of 8 drawings that are in there. And I have to say, as someone who's known Mike for a couple of years and have seen the depth of the catalog of drawings that he's got, I'm thrilled to see him getting the recognition that he deserves for this. I mean, it's just beyond pictures of buildings that we've all seen. That catalog goes so deep into the Wright catalog, to buildings that there were only sketches done, and Michael has taken those few sketches and made some intelligent decisions to flesh it out, so that someone like me, who's not necessarily trained in reading architectural drawings, can look at that design and feel what Wright was trying to do in a way that I could spend hours looking at those sketches and never get it, but from Michael's drawings I get it. So it's really wonderful.
I have already invited Michael to be a one-on-one guest for the podcast. I just haven't had time to sit down and talk him through the process so that he can decide if he wants to do it. So hopefully he'll see how fantastic this is and decides he wants to do it. And Heidi, I think he's actually been very generous to Unity Temple. Aren't you selling one of his prints now?
So generous, and Michael's so humble, and he's always saying how it's for the betterment of these buildings and for the Frank Lloyd Wright movement. But it's been a huge help. Yeah, so he oh, and I don't know if I sent that to you, but one of his beautiful sketches of the exterior of Unity Temple, he's allowing us to use to sell in our online museum shop, which is really small right now. We're going to be building that up, but it's great because that's not something you can get anywhere else. And so it's unique to our organization. Now,
where would we go for that? Is it on your website?
It is. Currently, there are 2 items in my online store right now. As I mentioned, I'm a one-woman show, so I kind of have to prioritize. But hopefully, this year and into next year, I'm going to be building it up with very Unity Temple specific items. I know you're going to talk about one, Tim. But yeah, it's utrf.org. And
utrf.org. Well, Michael's been very kind to allow me, because I own a small company that does things with a laser, and he's been very kind to allow me to do a cutting board that is engraved with Unity Temple on it. One of his great images. You'll see here. This is it's signed with the laser, so it's not his in-person signature, but he signed the original drawing. We have fit it. This is a rather small cutting board, and Heidi, you have the prototype as well as Michael. And what did you think of this board that we engraved of Unity Temple?
I couldn't believe it. Yeah, and I was very honored to have a copy in my office. I don't have one here to show you, so I was glad I thought to take a photo before. But no, it's amazing in the detail that is in there, because of course Michael's sketches are so detailed. So I'm not sure what kind of equipment you're using there, but it's pretty phenomenal. And what I like about these two is the ones you're producing, or at least the size of this one, it's smaller, so it's easy to display. And I mean, I would never cut on it, to be honest with you, but it's a beautiful piece of art.
Well, it is definitely meant to be a sort of a showpiece, although you could flip it over and use the other side. I think they're like 7 by 11 or something, so they're not very big. They're not huge. We are going to be selling these, and Stan's been very kind to tell us that we can share this on the Right Attitude. So as soon as I have the ability, a link for these for sale, they're going to be $30. And all of the proceeds of that will go, minus shipping, of course, because the shipping is going to have to come out of it. Every other penny will go to Unity Temple. So I'm donating the cutting boards and the cutting time and everything. I'm not going to charge even what we had talked about if you were going to put these in your shop. For anybody who buys them through the Right Attitude, I'm just going to donate all that. Oh, so, yeah, but it means you can't send me a letter asking me for money. Okay, Heidi? It just, no.
No, I think this will do. Thank you. That's incredible. And as you know, just like all these other sites, we're constantly looking for new ways to raise funds. And so this would be phenomenal. Thank you both.
And you know, the great part is these are going to be actually numbered. I think we're only doing up to 200 of them when you finally start selling them. So anybody who orders one in the next week or two, when we finally get the link up for that, will be able to buy one of the first, you know, 40 or 50 of them or so. A couple questions somebody asked. Marcus has a question about a plant question. In the restoration, were the plants replaced with what was originally specified, and were they originally specified plants? In the early drawings, there are plants all over the building. Rosine asked too if there were any intention to install these, or would they be detrimental to the structure?
Good question. I panicked for a minute because I know nothing about plants, but then now that I understand the question, we're okay. So on the interior, all those old sketches, we saw a lot of planting. It was never quite complete. So there is no, you know, then of course, intention to bring them back because they were never there. It's really beautiful what he did in the sketches. Also on the front, especially Marion Mahoney's sketch, or, you know, watercolor rendering of the building, it shows plants cascading down the front, and those were never put in place either. There had been over the years ivy over the building, but that of course is not what he intended. So as far as plantings during the restoration, in the large oversized planters as well as in the small planter beds on the terraces and around, those were completely redone by a local landscape architect, and it's all native plants, which is what they would have had originally. So
nice.
I couldn't even tell you what to call, but they're quite lovely.
And it's interesting because, you know, we had the same challenge at Hollyhock House. There's a number of planters. All of the staircases going up to the roofs had planters up at the top. There were a number of planters inside the house, each with a copper basin within the masonry that would serve as the holder for the plants. And we had that same decision, having to decide whether or not we would go back and utilize the plantings that had been, and then there's degradation that happens to the building when you go back and put the plants in. So for us, for the most part, we have some artificial plants inside, and for the one few we have replanted on the outside, gone with xeriscape appropriate plants for our sub-desert environment that we live in. A little bit less lush than probably some of the things that Mr. Wright would have called, or Lloyd Wright, who really the landscape plan for it, or even Miss Barnsdall back in her day. They didn't care about things like water.
So tell me, I think there are a lot of Wright sites where that becomes an issue. I think of when I give tours at Florida Southern College, the number of people who say, well, that Annie Pifer chapel looks nothing like the pictures, but in the pictures, it's a sales tool. You know, the picture has beautiful plants all pouring down from these great planters, these bow ties at the end of the what would have been maybe a bell tower, but is all this glass area. And of course, Wright didn't provide any way to water them. So you're not going to get plants to grow up there in Florida when it's 99 degrees today. So the building's bare from that. And same thing when you look at some of these, the drawings are so beautiful, but they don't necessarily reflect reality, right? So I can imagine that you have to make that balance of, do you try to do what he wanted in the photograph, in the drawings, or do you recognize that those are maybe idealized versions, and what is realistic to be able to do, right?
Well, it's interesting. You know, we have a lot of pictures, especially of the exterior of Hollyhock House over the first, say, quarter century of its existence, and it's a very lush picture. You see lots of vines running over the exterior of the house, and the central courtyard is got all sorts of things growing up, and unfortunately, none of them are authentic to the original plan or to what Wright had intended. The things that were put in by the California Art Club when they were living there and so forth. And so while they're gorgeous, they're not authentic. And so when we had to basically take them all out to do foundation repair and such, you're put into that position of having to decide, well, do I put these things back that are recognizable but non-authentic? People, for example, have always said, we used to have a giant bird of paradise in the central courtyard, which was spectacular, but was cracking the foundation and wasn't authentic. So we've kind of struck the balance where if there's something that's recognizable and identifiable and won't impact things in a negative fashion, then we put it back in. In other cases, similar to what you're talking about with the Annie Pifer, on the south side of the house, there are these beautiful series of terraces out the guest bedrooms, which are now gallery space, and which had lawn in them. Unfortunately, there's no way to get a lawnmower up there, and so unless you're bringing in goats, you have no choice. So for years, it served as as kind of the nursery for the hollyhocks, because it was the one place where the hollyhocks would grow wild. But dead hollyhocks 3/4 of the year just didn't look very good. So we ultimately made the decision. We wanted the grass because the grass was authentic, but we couldn't use real grass. So we ultimately put in some high-end AstroTurf. As the people who were there at the Conservancy saw, it was brand new, so it was still a little on the bright side. We're optimistic that over time it will look a little bit more lived in and lived on. And of course, we're planting. There are cutouts in the AstroTurf where there would have been plantings, and we have examples. We have photos from the early days of the house, so we know what to put where and make it a little bit less austere.
Well, I think, Stan, as long as you put in the right color goats that Wright would enjoy, then maybe. No.
Well, yeah, because if he had preferences when it comes to cows, he was going to have them when it came to goats. So.
And I think restoration is never a perfect science, but if you go to a pure preservationist point of view, it always is not what was meant to be, but what happened. So even if there's some really interesting things that were intended, well, they never were theirs. So I agree. There's some considerations that have to be made when you're going through the process.
Or look at that beautiful lighting that you guys have now. I mean, who would want to say that that's inappropriate when it's spectacular, right?
Right.
Yeah, so that was not obviously original, but it really makes that building sing, right?
Yeah, and again, geothermal isn't original, but we went ahead and added that. So a lot of it too is when new technologies come along, or in order to make the building usable for today's culture, it's different 100-some years ago. So yeah, and those uplights, it enhances the building and it doesn't change his structure. So that I thought was a good consideration.
And if anybody was quick to embrace technology, it was Mr. Wright. So if there was going to be someone who would be out there pushing for the geothermal or things like that, it would be him. They might not work right, but by gosh, he'd be out there pushing for the technology.
You're right.
Yeah. Speaking of lights, I have priced some Frank Lloyd Wright lamps in the past, and they're really expensive. So I don't know how much money you spent on the lamp behind you, Heidi. You want to tell us the story?
What's great is I posted this on The Right Attitude, and what a phenomenal response. People were so sweet. I think we had over 850 people liking it. And I joked with my son, who I'll tell you more about, that I've never gotten that much reaction from a professional post that I've done. So my son, who is 12 years old, made this for me, not from a kid, but from scratch. I had taken my family to the Lawrence House in Rockford right before Christmas time, and they have one of the lamps there. I took a photo and joked with my husband, who's an accomplished woodworker as a hobby, and said, "Oh, you need to make me one of these lamps." And for Mother's Day, that's what I got. So it's pretty impressive.
That's pretty good, right, Stan?
Oh my gosh. Yeah. I mean, I think all of us who have seen those lamps have looked at one and said, "Oh, I could do that." The problem is very few of us do. And for your 12-year-old to do that, wow. All I want to know is how soon are those going to be in the catalog?
He has to raise some money for college, so maybe we'll get going on that soon.
You might want to reference the, I can get you in touch with the licensing people that you'll definitely have to talk to. Just going to let you know, I've had those meetings, so you may want to make sure you have that. Hey, listen, Heidi, when you get the store put together, first of all, tell Stan's friends at Hollyhock how to do that, because I lived in a tiny house for years. I've complained to Stan about this before, but I don't collect lots of stuff. I mean, I now have a big enough house, 650 square feet, that I could put one of those lamps, but I usually just collect t-shirts, and I don't have a Unity Temple or a Hollyhock t-shirt. I'm wearing this Frank Lloyd Wright t-shirt that someone gave me. I'm not sure who gave it. I can't remember. It was one of two people, and I don't want to embarrass either one of them by telling the wrong person. So I know it was one of two people who's giving me the shirt, but I don't have a Unity Temple shirt to do. And I think you got to have one.
you know, that's something to think about. And definitely our friends at the foundation have been very helpful. I'm not joking. They have been very helpful.
Good.
So we'll have to look into that.
That would
And
be
I will
really,
point
really
out
great.
that while I don't believe there is a Unity Temple, there is a Hollyhock shirt or two in the Right Attitude store.
Yes, and I think actually, Stan, you're wearing some Right Attitude merchandise at the moment, a nice hat and others. So, yes. Well, we are actually over our hour-long time frame, and I don't want to keep people too long, but I want to give each of you, who've been very willing and kind guests, who really did, whatever reason, believe me when I told you might get paid for this. Not happening. Do you have anything you want to add to this conversation? We'll start, Heidi, with you.
Two things, and I'm pretty sure most of the people who are watching this know about this already, but make sure you're following if you're on, clearly you're on social media, but the Wright virtual visits, those have been hugely successful, and we're going to continue those throughout July. And then Jeff Goodman with the foundation and Eric Rogers from the Conservancy and I have been putting this together, and we're going to consider growing it or morphing it or doing something in addition with it after July. So keep an eye out for that. And yeah, if anyone's interested in learning more about Unity Temple, obviously we can't visit it right now, hopefully soon. It will be on the Wright Plus tour of next year in May of 2021. And we're always looking for support. So memberships, donations, attending programs when they start back up again. So I'm here, I'm the one you would talk to, so.
That is fantastic. And listen, I'm so looking forward to getting back to Oak Park and having dinner with you again, Heidi. And we didn't really talk about it here, but you definitely, if you are at all interested in Frank Lloyd Wright in Oak Park, you also have to go over to Pleasant Home and see that fantastic location, which is enormous, by the way. But Heidi, you were involved there for quite a number of years. So Heidi can actually kind of wrangle you a little bit of a good tour. So, just check out Heidi if you want to do that. Razine just commented that, let's see what he said. He said, we want these talks more frequently. So hopefully, Stan, you and I can get together and plan a few more of these to do with people. I think it's been useful. There's 37 people watching now. So hopefully they will.
I'm really pissed off 3 of them. That's good.
I think, listen, they had other Zoom meetings to go to or something. Who knows? Stan, I'll end it with you, and I'll just finish right after. After that, I'll do a little sign off. Tell us what else do you want to? You have a whole bunch of Right Attitude people not only live right now, but they'll be able to watch this later because it will be archived. And I'm going to share a copy with Heidi so that she can also put it onto her social media for Unity Temple. But Stan, you have the floor.
Well, I would just say, this has been a very difficult year for a lot of people, but for the Wright fan in particular, we basically canceled 2020. I mean, we had all these wonderful plans and trips. I know I've had 4 trips canceled, including one with Tim. It's been a tough year to be a Wright fan. And I think the use of technology through the Zoom meetings and the virtual visits and all the very creative things that people are doing has really stepped into that void and filled it in a wonderful way. We're going to see here on June 8th on Mr. Wright's birthday. I know they're going to do a virtual birthday party, the traditional Wright birthday party. There's also that the 40 slides in 400 seconds thing going at the name of which I suddenly can't remember, but it's
Cha-cha-cha, just so
thank you.
And I can that too, yeah.
Thank you. Which I think I'm very intrigued to see just to watch the concept, having sat through way too many long presentations. But these are all ways that the Wright fan can stay involved and keep our enthusiasm. And certainly the Right Attitude plays a role in that as well. Our goal with the group all along was to create a platform where the experienced right hands could come together and have those intelligent conversations. And the newer folks or the people who don't know as much can sit in the bleachers and learn, and when they feel comfortable can join the conversations as well. And I think it's really done a yeoman's job for that. So I thank all our members for their participation. I apologize for the times that I've irritated you, and just know that it's a process that I am very proud of, and I thank you all for your participation.
Well, thank you both for joining me. This has been our first live stream of the Not Too Serious Architecture Hour. It is a podcast I'm launching in July, and it will feature, at least for the very first season, almost completely Frank Lloyd Wright related content, and it's more conversational style. We had a little bit more presentation today, but as Stan can tell you, we get into some fun conversation and talk about our own feelings about architecture, some of the things we've done, crazy stuff we've seen, the ways we've chased each other from house to house at house walks and other things. And it's just a lot of fun. So you'll be able to get that podcast where better podcasts, especially the free ones, are sold. And hopefully you'll see us again in another week or two right back here with another group of guests bringing you the live streaming version of the Not Too Serious Architecture Hour podcast right here on The Right Attitude. For Heidi, for Stan, I've been Tim Totten. Thank you for joining us. Y'all have a great Memorial Day weekend. Bye-bye for now.